All right. Good afternoon, everyone. So, I told you guys last week that, after winning 13 days in a row or however long it felt like 3 weeks. It's probably around there. There are a few weeks of every single day being green. Definitely due to be unlucky, and we've been unlucky this week as far as options are concerned. Futures has been quite the opposite, but options pretty unlucky. Yesterday finished a small red day, two losses, one green. Today we went 0 and 3, or at least I went 0 and 3. Was Hornswoggle central this morning? I don't know what the hell was wrong with price action, but it was freaking awful. But I'm going to review it, and we're going to start with the pre market analysis. So here's the pre market analysis. Supply and demand are there. You can see really heavy supply demand on NQ, heavier supply cluster up here. I have all the pivots labeled. I don't really have much sentiment. One thing that's apparent is the cluster of solid buy-side pivots here. So even though we do have a 4-hour demand, so by the way, the demands are strong. And let me make sure by not losing. Yeah, no, they're all there. For some reason, all the supply and demands are like multi-hour, right? So we have strong supply and demand zones. But you can see this head and shoulders on ES here. Oh yeah, let me share the screen real quick. You guys can join. This is 1 minute before market open. So you can see a head and shoulders here on ES, and we have a cluster of pivots here. That's pretty basic. So I don't have any initial sentiment, but if we come down and invalidate a majority of this bounce, I'm going to be triggered into short, which are puts during the first hour, targeting these pivots here. Otherwise, we have this pivot above, we have this supply above on ES. If we start shooting up and I have solid strength divergence and momentum, well, I'm okay taking a continuation trade to supply. So that's kind of the pre-market analysis. And sure enough, kind of right at market open, it exploded. And you can't really see it here, but during a majority of this candle, NQ was just incredibly strong. Incredible strength on NQ. I mean, it's much closer to the pivot is than ES is, but very strong on NQ. Starting to get kind of flashbacks from yesterday, but I'm like, okay, it's not bad. Well, I don't want to go all the way to the pivot because it's way too far away. And this first supply is too close. I plan on taking very heavy trims at the second supply and then holding a runner position to this pivot. That's kind of my plan when I entered. Looks very solid with the momentum and all that stuff. And immediately I was kind of green, right? I filled half size initially, but then it came down, average down here. Stop loss was pretty hard now. And now I'm green on the trade. I think I was green by like 15% on this candle. And then I got to like 20% gains here. And I said it's an okay trim, but the risk reward's terrible. I just can't trim here. I was looking just for the second supply. And you can see ES was weak. NQ was a lot stronger. It's actually looking pretty nice. Until it wasn't. So I stopped out on this candle for, I believe it was like minus 26%. So, okay, I guess it really doesn't want that supply. So, very similar to what happened yesterday. And I'm going to have to audit my market open trades over the last 3 weeks. I've been getting it. This year, for some reason, every market open candle is freaking massive. It used to not be that way. And they're also very directional, right? They're very intentional. It's not just a massive candle with a massive wick, a buying wick and a selling wick. They're like just massive green or red candles. And the problem is, one of my major triggers to trigger me into a trade is when a majority of a move is invalidated, I target the nearest point of liquidity, which is typically a pivot or a combination of pivot and supply or demand. Well, if it open, we explode to the upside, we're strong, we invalidate a majority of the drop, and we have a nice pivot above, but we have a nice supply cluster to target, well, I'm probably going to end up taking that trade. Yesterday was a bit different because we actually had a gap overhead, and that gap did end up filling. That is very similar to yesterday. So this was my first bias, and anyways, it stopped out minus 26%. That sucks, but, that's That just happens, right? So now things are starting to get a little fishy on this candle. We bounced pretty hard out of ES demand. And NQ didn't even get to demand, and we invalidated a majority of this red candle here. So that was interesting. And I couldn't help but still feel mildly bullish with how this candle acted and how much of that massive red candle it did invalidate. But then we get this candle. Yes, it's definitely weaker than NQ. And now I have to start thinking about my pre-market analysis, right? I planned on being triggered into puts if a majority of this drop has invalidated. Well, it did. A majority of it did technically invalidate. But I really don't, with NQ's strength and how hard it bounced, I really don't want to enter before I see how NQ touches demand. Because I'm starting to think that NQ is pretty likely to bounce hard out of demand. But you can kind of see the head and shoulders forming here. And I get really close to entering puts. But then we put in a huge green candle just for it to put in a huge selling wick. So lots of buying down here. And NQ still didn't get to the demand. And it's a lot of that. It's a lot of really big bounces. And in the last bit of the candle, it just starts selling off and puts in a wick. So I thought that was interesting, and I was still leaning a little bullish. Look, I'm like, we are one green candle away from squeezing the new high of day. With how many selling wicks are here and how many shorts are trying to suppress each of these moves. One major selling wick invalidation, if we can just get to this white line, I'm thinking calls. But then this candle happens, and it didn't happen because of news. And NQ touched demand, bounced out of it. We got a decent little volume spike. And let me figure out where exactly what time I filled. Okay. So we got a decent little volume spike and a buying wick. And I'm like, okay, well, if this buying wick fully invalidates, and it's a bearish invalidation, or I meant bearish momentum, I'm going to be triggered into those puts that I talked about in the pre-market. But now I'm very conflicted. Well, that's a pretty bearish candle. NQ's still putting in a bit of a buying wick. But that's a pretty bearish candle there. So I end up filling my SPX puts, but I'm really uneasy about it. I can't really afford to wait another large candle because that'll destroy the risk to reward. So I end up filling lighter size, not quite half size. It was a little bit over half size with room to add in case NQ bounces out of the demand. So a fairly small trade here just because I'm really just looking to execute my pre-market analysis. And a majority of this bounce did invalidate. That was kind of my plan, but things are really fishy with the buying wick and just the massive amount of buying down here in NQ. Plus, we're in demand now. I don't really like it. So that's why I went lighter size. I was pretty green at the start. I was up 20%. And here I'm like, okay, well, this looks really good. Like, we invalidated the buying wicks. NQ looks really good. Looks solid. And then that candle happened. My stop loss was actually like right here. And then this candle happened. The exact same thing as the last trade. Absolute freaking hornswoggle. So I quickly stopped out. I didn't even average down, right? This is what I was waiting for. NQ invalidated a majority of the drop. It's stronger than ES. ES is still in demand, right? We bounce out of demand on NQ. It looks freaking beautiful for the stop loss raid, or not the stop loss raid, the short squeeze to high of day. I have to get in this as trade. This is a trade I always get in. So I stopped out here, and it's actually only a minus 17% trade. I only lost 17% on it, and I was lighter size, so it really wasn't a big loss at all. Right now, my red day is roughly medium size. And I fill my QQQ calls a little bit late. I filled them during the next candle. It actually gave me a pretty decent fill, though. PT's new high of day, but if it struggles getting there, I'm okay trimming at the supply cluster. And I filled the QQQ calls one strike closer to the money than I was previously at 57 cents. And it started off okay. This is freaking beautiful. I was up 37% on this candle. Not at price target. Only been in for a minute, so it's not like I can sell. And then this freaking candle happens. So I'm like, oh god, yeah, today's just one of those days. Like, it's really rare that I stop out of 2 trades in a row in the exact same fashion. Like, small green and then just candle from hell emerges, blows me out of my position, rips my face off, and that's just kind of the end of the trade. It's really rare that that happens twice in a row, and definitely by this candle, I'm turned off from trading this first hour. Something's going on with price action. I don't know what the deal is, but this is very, very irregular price action. And we end up bouncing around. We end up flipping green. And what I also found very interesting about this morning is the contracts did not chop at all. For whatever reason, implied volatility stayed elevated throughout the entire morning, enough to offset the theta decay, because I saw no theta decay whatsoever. But anyways, I was back up 30% here. I'm like, okay, it might work out. And then NQ flipped weak. And then it didn't work out. And I end up stopping out on this candle. So I took one more loss, minus 21% there. So still kind of a medium red day, a little bit bigger than my average red day. Whatever tiers above medium, that's not like big. It's in between medium and big. But anyways, so this was a dilemma, and this is something that I was kind of going back and forth with myself, and you guys saw it during the live trading today, which I keep forgetting to do the free live trading. I just can't freaking remember for the life of me to do it. I'm getting up at 5:30 in the morning now because time changed, and Arizona doesn't change with everyone else. So at some point we'll do that. Anyways, so in theory, I'm triggered back into those puts, but I just got mollywopped 3 times in a row, and I have to think, right? We have to think critically as far as risk to reward goes. It's not often that I get hornswoggled 3 times in a row in the mornings. As you guys know, it's pretty rare. Once a month, maybe once every couple of months. So my psyche is already starting to deteriorate. My trading psychology is already starting to deteriorate. I don't really want to accept another loss this morning. But I'm also pretty confident in ES at least getting to this pivot. But the reality is, I wouldn't just go to the nearest pivot. I would look for a demand break, break of the pivot cluster, because this is a beautiful head and shoulders. It's pretty likely to at least sweep the low in general, as far as head and shoulders go. They're likely to at least sweep the low of the left collar, right? This level right here. Very, very typical. So I want to enter here, but I can pretty much guarantee that if I do enter and it wins, well, great, that should be a sizable win. I make back most of my losses, and it'll be a small red day. But I know that I wouldn't get another green trade, because even if we do come all the way back up, by the time it comes all the way back up, I'm not going to be trading options anymore. It's going to be pretty much futures time. And if we keep going down, I don't think I'm going to be willing to enter shorts or puts, even if we bearishly consolidate, because by that time, NQ is going to be pushing really heavy demand. And based on how supply and demand have been acting lately, or especially today, which is freaking insane, like indicators of, I feel like price action's a paid actor to advertise my supply and demand indicator, because it's been insane how accurate it's been lately. It's been a little bit too accurate to where it's like, okay, I don't trade blindly off supply and demand. It's just one of my confirmations. So I don't want it to be super accurate, because cases like today, it actually hurt me. But anyways, with how strong supply and demand has been, I don't want to take puts deep in this demand. I just don't think it's going to play out. So I pretty much know that if I take this trade and it ends up being green, that's my final trade. But what I also know is if I take this freaking trade and it stops out, especially after sweeping a lower low, I'm really going to have to take this QQQ call trade again. And if best case scenario, I make my money back. Worst case scenario, which is honestly looking a bit more likely, we come back down, I stop out, And then do I try the put trade again? If it happens fast enough, like it has been today, I mean, I went through 3 trades in just over 20 minutes. That's a reality. So, what's going to happen to my psychology? Am I willing to risk stopping out twice in a row or 3 times in a row in pursuit of one win? No. I have to keep that door shut, right? That's too much potential psychological decay. That's more losses than I'm willing to take or willing to expose myself to. I just can't do it, right? I just simply can't do it. So I decided to keep the door shut. It's just a better thing psychologically to do. It's safer. You know, if I had another green trade lined up after this one, then it would be a different story, right? But I couldn't do it. Well, it got to the first pivot, which means I would have trimmed, but I only would have trimmed roughly half and left the rest for the next one, and I would have stopped out of that last bit. If not here, definitely here, because that is a really nice bullish liquidity sweep. I would have stopped out for a loss on the last half, which means best case scenario, it would have been a very small green trade. Well, this is really bullish. That looks pretty good. Until it didn't, and it came right back down. Not only did it come right back down, but it barely missed this major pivot. And NQ is barely missing this major pivot. And we barely missed it by even more. It started bouncing up and I sent out a TA alert. I'm like, in normal markets, even though we're chopping down in demand, this bounce is actually a pretty solid put opportunity. And if I were still trading, I would scale into puts here. I would. Because we barely missed the pivot on ES and NQ. It's extremely unlikely that that pivot doesn't sweep, and it got close. Look how close NQ got. It missed it by a singular tick. And then it shot all the way back up. So I would have actually lost money if I kept trading because, yeah, demand has been fairly heavy. And we were sweeping a pivot, but NQ was weak at the time. We had the trend going, and missed pivot is also a bias builder for me. So yeah, that's what would have happened if I kept trading. Was not a very probable first hour, especially with the fact like we did sweep this pivot, but we missed these ones barely. Yeah, not very probable at all. And I don't remember if this ended up coming back down later in the day. I'll check. But what I told all of you guys is, well, it's a good thing for me because I didn't lose any money pursuing that pivot, except the one put trade that I took. So this is a free setup for the future, right? And I told you guys, if this comes back down and invalidates the majority of the move, this is a great short trade, and I will be in it during my futures trading session. That didn't happen, though. We just kept shooting up, and I ended up filling longs on futures here. It kind of sucked because I can't trade futures until the start of the second hour. So I had to fill at the top of that huge candle, but I ended up going to supply, and yeah, that was a trade I took, and it freaking got there. It did more than get there. It went way past that. So futures was super bright green again. I mean, you made $1,000 per mini for everyone that took this trade with me. And this level, let's see if it's still intact. I think it's still intact. Well, it's not going to be intact by tomorrow morning, but if it is, I will be in there like underwear. I'll be inputs very heavy. Not very heavy to where I'm risking an insane amount, right? I will never risk more than I'm willing to spend on this particular trade. But I'll be in with sizable size. You know, I'll never go above 2x sizing. I'll probably be in 2x. And this is a huge head and shoulders on my chart now, an even bigger one. So watch this level, this 24,892 level. It's pretty much a perfect double bottom. Statistically, that needs to break, right? That doesn't mean blow your account if it doesn't, right? Still have a stop loss if you trade for it. But statistically speaking, that's something that needs to break. And I really hope that level's intact tomorrow. Also, ES2. These are really solid pivots down here. Very big pivot cluster. So fingers crossed, if these pivots are intact for tomorrow and we're still in the vicinity, it's going to be looking like a great trading morning tomorrow. Knock on wood, of course, but yeah, that was my morning. Just absolute hornswoggle central this morning. Nothing I can really do about it though. The trades were good. The only trade that was a bit iffy is my put trade, but that's why I sized down for it. Took a pretty small loss. Um, but yeah, this morning was not a fun time at all. Not a fun time. So hopefully tomorrow morning is more fun. But all right, type in chat if you guys have any questions or comments regarding any of the analysis that I just talked about. Otherwise, no, it doesn't look like anyone has any questions. All right, sweet. Well, we have the trade arena tomorrow at exactly this time at market close. So make sure you're there for that. Free member, premium member, doesn't matter. Be there for the trade arena compete. There will be a cash prize for the winner. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll let you guys know when this YouTube is posted. I didn't do that yesterday, but I did uh, announce it this morning. Let you guys know when this is posted. And yeah, if I don't see you tomorrow or tonight for the study session, I'll see you guys bright and early tomorrow morning for hopefully a green options day that doesn't cost me a green futures day. Hopefully I can get a freaking day this week where both are green. That'd be awesome. And we can get back to our regularly scheduled programming of getting rich every morning on options. All right. I'll see you guys later. Thanks for attending.